Greetings fellow rollers and welcome back to RPGenesis, where characters are more than numbers. No matter what RPG we're going to be covering in this series, not all the characters created are going to be mine. My fiance, and in 2 weeks from recording of this video, wife, will also be making some of these characters. However, she's not confident on camera or microphone, so she's asked me to speak on her behalf, which I'm going to. So let's see what she creates with her first character of the series, the second class in the player's handbook, the Bard. Bards are depicted differently depending on the fantasy you look at, but in D&D, a Bard is a performing artist, often a musician, who uses their artistic skills to cast magical spells. They are often used as the face of the group, able to talk their way out of bad situations with wit, charm, and cunning. Their uses also extend to social situations. As a member of the party with a wit as sharp as their swords, or possibly through the use of spells, they can turn a pub free-for-all brawl into a hoedown. However, I think most people watching this video know the stereotype of the horny bard, and yes, people do play them like that sometimes. At least, that's your typical bard. You're free to change the formula how you want. I personally am playing a bard at the minute who's just very creepy and uses manipulation and fear to get what he wants out of people. But it's not about me today, it's about Aka's character. That's breaking the class down to its bare bones. In terms of game mechanics, they are mainly a buffing or debuffing support role, but they can be modified slightly depending on how you build them to be a melee attacker or even a healer. Like Orig Steelheart, Aka already has a name for this character, Embers. So let's see what kind of bard she's going to create to earn a name like that. Last episode, Orig was made by following the steps in the order they appear in the book. You don't have to stick to the order, and you can do what Aka likes to do and bounce between the sections like a drunken kangaroo on a bouncy castle. This can sometimes make choices easier for you during creation. An example would be to choose a race that naturally gets proficiency in the skill that you want, so you can choose another class skill instead, or maybe you want a class that doesn't get that skill straight away. With this in mind, we know where Aka's going to be starting. Step 2, which is choose a class, and we know what it is, it's the Bard. Step 3, which was to determine the stats. Last time we used the 4d6 method. This time we're going to show off another method. Point buy. You will have 27 points to use as a currency to improve your ability scores. Each ability can start no lower than 8 for a cost of 0 points, but the higher you want to increase it, the more points it will cost every time. So for example, if I was to increase a score from 8 to 9, it would cost 1 point. And then to increase it from 9 to 10, it would then cost another 2 points, and so on up to a maximum of 15. At that point, you will need to rely on racial bonuses to push it further. If you do struggle with numbers, you can find stat calculators online to help you. As a bard, Aka chose to favour charisma as this is the stat they use to cast spells, and dexterity for a defensive and aggressive purpose. With this in mind, Embers the Bard currently has a strength of 8, a dexterity of 15, a con of 13, intelligence of 8, wisdom of 13, and charisma of 15. Now Aka moves on to choose a race. Aka decided to go with a half-orc. As such, the racial bonuses will increase Ember's strength by 2 and the constitution by 1. Some experienced players will watch this and ask, why the hell is she doing that? If she's meant to be focusing on charisma and dexterity, why is she choosing a race that favours strength and constitution? Her reasoning is that it is for design and flavour for the character. She acknowledges there isn't a huge benefit to choosing this race, she just thought it sounded cool to do. Sometimes an unusual combination can create a really unique, fun and memorable character to play. Looking deeper into the features of the half-orcs, they mature at age 14. Aka wanted a middle-aged character, so Embers is 30. As a humanoid, his size will be medium and his base walking speed is 30 feet. His racial feats include Relentless Endurance, which allow him to reset his health points to 1 the first time he hits 0, and Savage Attacks, which lets him add extra damage dice to a critical hit. He will also have Dark Vision up to 60 feet, know the Common and Orcish languages, and will have proficiency in the Intimidation skill. When it comes to alignment, the lore of D&D states that they lean more towards chaotic because it is in the inherited nature of their orc parent, and those who grew up around orcs tend to go evil. As mentioned before with Orig, you don't have to stick to this if you don't want to. Akka decided to put a pin in choosing the alignment for now and would come back to it after she'd worked out a backstory. With the race mostly settled, Embers has had an improvement in strength and constitution, is medium sized, moves at a base of 30 feet in combat, can see up to 60 feet monochrome in the dark, has intimidation proficiency, 2 racial feats and knows 2 languages. At level 1, a bard's health is 8 combined with the con modifier. As Embers has a +2 in con, his beginning health is 10. A decent chance he could go down in a single hit if the dice deem it so, but there's also a fair chance he won't. Embers' starting proficiencies include light armor, simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers and short swords. You will also be able to choose 3 instruments to be proficient in. These could be whatever you want them to be so long as the DM accepts it. You could stick to what's in the book, like a harp. You could have a historical one, like a hurdy-gurdy. Something perhaps maybe more modern, like a violin. Or do something silly, like a triangle. Akka chose a lute, lyre, and a viol. Now here is where we see one of the things that makes bards appealing to certain players. Some people, like myself, refer to bards as skill monkeys, a term used in gaming to refer to characters who have access to a lot of different abilities and skills. This is because bards gain a considerable amount of bonuses when it comes to skills. At level 1, they get to choose to be proficient in 3 of them. At this stage of creating, Akka takes a temporary detour to choose a background so that she can avoid choosing a skill proficiency that the background will grant her anyway. She decided on the charlatan background, which will give Embers proficiency in sleight of hand and the deception skills, plus proficiency with the disguise and forgery kits. This will also give him an additional starting equipment of a set of fine clothes, a disguise kit, a tool related to the con of Akka's choice, in this case a set of weighted dice, and 15 gold pieces. It will also grant the feature False Identity. You have a second identity complete with forged documentation, disguises, and established acquaintances to assume that persona. It will also let you forge documents as long as you have seen the handwriting you want to forge. It seems like nefarious deeds lie ahead of Embers. For the case of personality, Akka has decided this time to devise her own for Embers. For personality, Embers is going to be stereotypical and have a flirty charmer personality. His ideal is to seek out what he deems to be fun and enjoyable, likely in the form of cons and hustles. His bond says he is difficult to befriend but loyal to those who manage such a challenge, and his flaw is seeing life as a game and is unsympathetic to the losers at times. Now that Akka has a better idea of Embers' backstory and personality, she takes the pin out of alignment and chooses chaotic neutral before returning back to the class step. Now I know that might have sounded a bit confusing with bouncing back and forth, but trust me, once you get into the game and you get into character creation, you'll find yourself doing the same, looking for the best possible options as you go, going from section to section to get the character just right for you. The 3 skills she's decided to choose now that the background has granted her some are going to be Insight, Performance, and Persuasion. For starting equipment, Akka chose a rapier to benefit from the dex stat, an entertainer's pack, a musical instrument of her choice, of which is the lyre, leather armor, and a dagger. Akka also gets to decide on what 6 spells to start with. However, once again, she's putting a pin in that one because this requires some additional explanation we will get into later. Now on to the bard class itself. Now if you've watched the barbarian video, you know that from this point on, in terms of the D&D series, we're going to be using one additional book to create the character alongside the player's handbook. And in this episode, we're going to be using Xanathar's Guide to Everything, a book which features some additional subclasses. And these options are going to be highlighted in the video with blue text. For level 1, bards gain access to one of the most valued and loved class feats in the game, Bardic Inspiration. The short version is this allows the bard to take on the role of a cheerleader. The more in-depth version is that the bard gets a number of dice equal to their charisma modifier called Inspiration dice, currently with the strength of a d6. These dice can be given both in and out of combat, but in combat it requires a bonus action to do. When a player with Inspiration rolls an ability check, attack roll, or a saving throw, they can choose to use the Inspiration dice and add its number to the result. this must be done before the Dungeon Master says if you have passed or failed the roll. Once the dice is given out, it is lost to the bard, but they can regain all expenditures after a long rest. The inspiration lasts for 10 in-game minutes. The size of the dice will increase as Ember's bard level also increases. We're almost done with level 1, but now I need to explain what we have not covered properly in the series so far. Spellcasting. Each class that is able to cast a spell casts them differently, and it can be a little bit confusing, especially if I was to explain it all at once. So what I'm going to do is explain it in chunks as and when necessary. But the one thing that stays the same for all of the classes is spell slots, and these are basically how many times you can cast a spell at a certain level. When it hits 0, you can't do it anymore until you regain these spell slots, however your class gains them back. If you haven't seen it already, episode 0 will give you a better idea on how spell slots work, but right now, we're going to explain how spells work for bards. Each spellcasting class will know some spells to begin with, but this also differs depending on the class itself. In the case of Embers, a level 1 bard, he will know 2 cantrips, 4 level 1 spells, but will only have 2 level 1 spell slots to cast any one of these 4 spells. Starting with cantrips. These spells are spells that can be used for free without having to use any sort of spell slot at all. The drawback is that these are often weak, but better than nothing. Think of them like an unlimited ammo pistol you see in video games. Yes, you have more powerful weapons to hand, but using the pistol will save your ammo for when something bigger and tougher shows up. Akka decided that the spell she would go for would focus on buffing allies, debuffing foes, or anything that just fits Ember's vibe. So the first 2 cantrips will be Thunderclap for an aggressive option, and a favourite among bards, Vicious Mockery. Then for the 4 level 1 spells, she chose Earth Tremor, Charm Person, Featherfall, and Healing Word, which is handy because it helps explain the next section of Spellcasting 101. The nature of spells will change depending on which one is used. Some, like Healing Word, just happen, and there's very little input that's required. Some spells, like Vicious Mockery, will require the target to make a saving throw. To determine if they make the save, they will need to beat your spell save difficulty check, which is calculated as 8 plus your proficiency plus the modifier of the relevant stat. So in the case of Embers, his spell save DC is 8 plus 2 for his proficiency plus 2 for his charisma modifier, equaling 12. So if the target makes a saving throw and it adds up to less than 12, the spell succeeds, and if it is higher, the spell fails. Some spells like Firebolt will require you to make an attack roll. This is simply calculated like you would calculate a weapon attack roll. Your proficiency plus your relevant stat modifier added on top of the d20 roll. Now we come to a type of spellcasting not every spellcasting class has access to, but bards are among those who do. Ritual casting. Some spells will have the tag Ritual. A spell with this tag means a character, with the right conditions, can cast this spell in 10 minutes but will not expend a spell slot to do it. These spells will not be ones that are aggressive in nature, but they will be utility based, like for example, Alarm. This can be very handy if you aren't in a hurry to cast a spell and want to save your arcane strength for when you really need it. So here we are at the end of Bard level 1. So to summarise, including the details from the detour to the background section, Embers has 10 health, a proficiency bonus of 2, an armor class of 13, 2 bardic inspiration dice, 2 cantrips, 4 level 1 spells, 2 level 1 spell slots, a dagger, a rapier, an entertainer's pack, leather armor, 15 gold pieces, equipment from the charlatan background, a total of 6 skill proficiencies, 2 tool proficiencies, 1 armor proficiency, 5 weapon proficiencies, a spell attack modifier of +4, and a spell difficulty check save of 12, along with 3 racial traits and musical instrument proficiency. Now it's time for one of the best things about D&D, leveling up. In regards to health, Akka played it safe and took the average of 5 to guarantee her an increase of 7 to Ember's health instead of risking it on the D8 health dice bards get. So Ember's health now stands at 17. Embers also now has a total of 3 first level spell slots and knows 5 spells. Akka took Fairy Fire for his new spell. The Skill Monkey reputation gains even more favour now, as 2 new class feats are required. Jack of Trades, which lets you add half of your proficiency bonus rounded down to any skill that you are not proficient in, meaning all of his non-proficient skills will increase by 1 and will continue to increase as his proficiency bonus gets higher. And the second class feat, Song of Rest. During a short rest, as long as the party can hear Ember's performance, they will gain an additional d6 of healing on top of any dice they may use when rolling to heal. These dice also increase in size as your bard level increases. And as easy as that, level 2 is finished, with only a few but effective additions to Embers. Now on to level 3, and just like most other classes, this is where it gets interesting. Akka plays it safe once more with another guaranteed 7 health increase, which pushes his total up to 24. The 4th and final level 1 spell slot is granted, but in addition, 2 level 2 spell slots are gained and the total of known spells is increased to 6. This time, Akka chose her first level 2 spell, Pyrotechnics, for debuffing options. Now, as a side note, although Akka didn't do it for Embers, Bards are one of the classes that are able to swap out the spells they know every time they level up, so bear that in mind when you're creating yours. One of mine and Akka's favourite class feats also is granted at level 3 and further pushes Bards into being the Skill Monkey. Expertise, which lets you choose a skill you are proficient in and double your proficiency bonus with it. Akka chose Deception and Persuasion for her expertise skills, meaning those skills now get to add the proficiency bonus twice, making it easier for Embers to be the smooth-talking, silver-tongued scoundrel that he is. While helpful, Expertise is not the main event of level 3. Now it's time to choose a subclass, which in terms of the Bard is called a College. This is where Akka decided to enroll in the College of Glamour. Now, while not a literal college, rather that the term college is used to describe the techniques that the Bard will use, I jokingly call them students of the college. And students of the Glamour College train in the ways of the Feywild, a dimension populated by Fey. Taking this subclass grants Embers 2 new class features. First is Mantle of Inspiration. This improves Bardic Inspiration by giving it an optional secondary use. Using one of your Bardic Inspiration charges, you can use it on a number of targets equal to your Charisma modifier within 60 feet of you, and give them 5 temporary hit points. If done in combat, the targets can then use their reaction to move up to their max movement speed without provoking opportunity attacks. The temporary health granted also increases with Bard levels. The second is Enthralling Performance. This lets you, quote, charge your performance with seductive Fey magic. It is indeed a powerful role-playing skill. If you perform for 1 minute of game time, a number of humanoids who watch your performance up to or equal your charisma modifier must make a wisdom saving throw against your DC, else they will become charmed and start acting like the adoring fan from Elder Scrolls Oblivion. For 1 hour, they will idolize you unless you harm them or they see you hurt one of their allies to end it early. While charmed, they will hinder those who oppose you, give you high praise, and will fight with you if they are already prepared to do so. If, however, they make the save, they have no idea you tried to charm them. Indeed, a very powerful skill for a character like Embers. Now that was a mouthful to take in, but we're almost done as we reach the end of level 3 and push him up to level 4. For a final time, Akka plays it safe with the health and increases it now to 31. As some of you may remember, this is where we get to either increase our stats or choose a feature. Akka dove even deeper into the Skill Monkey mindset and chose the feature Prodigy, a feat only available to half-orcs, half-elves or humans. This feat allows you to choose a new skill proficiency, 1 new tool proficiency, and 1 new language. Not only that, you will be also granted expertise in a proficient skill. With this bounty of new knowledge to apply, Akka chose to gain proficiency in the perception skill, proficiency in dice sets to make better use of the weighted dice, and become fluent in Elvish. Then finally, taking expertise in insight. At level 4, Bards will also learn a new cantrip. In this case, Akka chose Dancing Lights. They will also get themselves a third level 2 spell slot and a new spell. Akka chose another spell to aid with the persuading of NPCs, which is the level 2 spell, Suggestion. And with that, Embers, the level 4 half-orc glamour bard, is complete. As always, you are invited to leave your thoughts and your bard characters in the comments below. As you do, I hope you enjoy the backstory narrated by Sleepless Readings. Thanks for watching everyone, and may the dice forever roll in your favour.
Embers managed to build a small reputation for himself amongst the affluent citizens of Rawcliffe. It wasn't exactly like any of the fine people of the court would ever admit to becoming so charmed by a half-orc, but his way with words and a lyre would open their hearts and their beds to him more often than not. His reputation amongst the taverns and brothels was a little different. Popular and friendly to all who knew him, he'd usually be the guy filling a room with song and high spirits, before buying everyone a fresh round of mead, whilst recalling the tales of his latest rich honeys. As a young boy, Kirak Grag had been found alone and abandoned by a travelling bard. The tribe of orcs and half-orcs he had originally been travelling with, leaving him behind after his mother died in a fierce battle with a troll. With no one to care for him, he was merely another mouth for the tribe to feed. The bard was a famous singer, going by many names, but we shall call her Serana the Siren, an elven legend among the performers of Ilum. Serana took the boy under her wing, teaching him various instruments such as flutes and violas, but Kirak showed a particular skill with the lyre. After a couple of years traveling together, once she had felt the lad had proved himself, Serana shared with him her greatest secret, a door into the Feywilds. The two of them traveled over the country for many years, in and out of the Feywilds, where they played with the nymphs and the spirits of nature. It was here that the Fey gave Kirak his new name, claiming it was a word that matched the spark in his eyes each time they revealed to him a secret new way to charm the mortal world. The light in his eyes, like the embers of a fairy spell cast on a darkly veiled night. The Fae granted them both a great talent, both musical and seductive, the likes of which most could never even hope to experience. The duo was happy, traveling and performing to praise and fortune at each tavern and brothel they came across. It was decades later when the two finally parted, Serana moving on to her next adventure in a new country, and Embers much preferring to stay in familiar territory, a big fish in a smaller pond. Living his life as a game and spending each day as he pleased, Embers saw no greater treasure than a good drink and the adoration of a crowd of beautiful people. When approached by the guild, the Reckless Right, the prospect of thrilling tales of adventure and feats of heroism to add to his repertoire proved too good to decline. Surely a bard trained by the Fae will have no problem charming monstrous villains just as he does the rich and beautiful.